Welcome back, Deep Review TV viewers. It's Chris Nichols here. We've been reviewing a lot of made-for-mirrorless super telephoto lenses, and today, no exception, we've got the brand new Sigma Sport DG DN 150-600. And surprise, surprise, we're not at the zoo this time. We've actually come out to the park. We're going to look for some wildlife to see what we can get today. Now, as you can probably see behind me here, we still have a lot of forest fire smoke in the air, and it's an overcast day. So first off, I don't have a lot of light, and shooting a super telephoto that's not particularly fast apertured means I'm going to be using higher ISOs today. I know it's not ideal for lens testing. Obviously, also shooting long distances, we're going to get a lot of particulate in the air, and that's going to kind of hurt our image quality, but it'll look very beautiful as far as the light goes, I think. But don't worry, we will absolutely get samples on this lens under more ideal conditions and at base ISO. So let's get to shooting. So of course, the first thing you notice about a telephoto lens is that yes, they're big and they're usually heavy, but the Sigma 150-600 isn't that bad. So this is just over a knocked, 4.6 pounds. And it's an interesting contrast when you look at the Tamron 150-500 that we just played with. That lens is hovering just under a knocked, so a little bit lighter, but not by that much. And that lens, you have to remember, is a 150-500. It's losing 100 millimeters off the telephoto focal length. Also, the Tamron was a 6.7 maximum aperture at 500. By the time you get here to 500, you're at 6.3, and it stays that way till you get to 600. So we've got a faster lens here, slightly larger, about an inch longer physically, but otherwise very manageable. Now, of course, being a sports series Sigma lens, this is weather resistant, and I do like that the tripod collar has the Arca Swiss dovetail cut. This also, though, unlike the Tamron lens, has click stops, nice and positive click stops at 90-degree increments. That's really nice to have as well. The other thing I want to say about this is that it actually does have space in the back for a teleconverter, again, unlike the Tamron 150-500. Of course, your camera's going to have a harder time focusing with that extra loss of light, but it's nice that we can extend the range of this lens even further if we want to. We also have customizable buttons here as per usual on these lenses, but now let's get to zoom rings and switches. So first, let's start off with the usual stuff. I mean, we've got focus selector, we have a focus limiter switch. This lens does have a 4-stop optical stabilizer. And of course, you have your mode selector switch there, and then you have some custom mode buttons as well. When we move to the front of the lens, though, this is where things get a little interesting. The zoom ring has this tapered collar to it, and that'll make sense why they did that here shortly, but you don't see that very often. And here we have a switch on the side. This has got L for lock, T for tight, and S for smooth. Now I can lock the whole lens at 150 millimeters, just great for travel. You know, the lens won't creep or open up on you. When you go to T for tight, now you get a much tighter, more stiff zoom ring, but it's nice to be able to maintain control here. And as well, it won't creep at all in that setting. So choose the focal length you want, you can walk around and it should roughly stay there. But we also have the S setting, which is a smooth setting. Now, this really does make it easy to zoom the lens, and it will absolutely creep on its own if you give it a chance, but it does something very cool. Right here behind the hood, there's a little bit of a lip, and I can put my fingers on there, and then I can actually push-pull zoom this lens rather than twisting the zoom ring. That's just another interesting option. You might like that. You might find it faster. You might find it easier to maintain your position on something like wildlife instead of having to torque the ring here. So, interesting feature. Okay, so it's time for a more informal autofocus speed test. I've got the beep on here pretty loud. You should be able to hear the lens going back and forth. Now, we can't use a Ninja to record off of Panasonic's because it slows down their autofocusing, so we'll just do it this way. I'm gonna focus on this log here, first in the full focusing range from minimum to basically infinity there in the background, and you guys should be able to hear the beep. Here we go. So close. Not bad, but not great. Now keep in mind, we are using the full focusing range right now, and this is a stepping motor in this lens, but let's now limit the focus to 10 meters to infinity and see how that speeds things up. So you can see there with the focus limiter set, our speed improved quite a bit as we expected. I will say this lens seems to focus faster when you're far away and then you have to focus on something closer rather than if you're focused close and then you have to focus farther away. The speed's adequate, but it's not blowing me away. I think if you had wildlife on the same focal plane, you know, panning with something, it would do just fine, but otherwise it's a little bit slower than we would expect. Now keep in mind, with one caveat, we're shooting on Panasonic's here today. This lens does have an L mount and an E mount version. The Tamron is only for E mount, but I will say that Panasonic's first off focus quite fast point to point, and on E mount I feel like the Tamron focused quite a bit faster than this lens will, but regardless, this does feel slower to me for focusing speed. Now, very much like the Tamron 150-500, the Sigma 150-600 has a very versatile macro function. Just like the Tamron, I get my best focusing capability at 150 millimeters. I'm getting about a 23-inch minimum focusing distance at 150 millimeters. I'm getting about 1 to 3 macro life-size reproduction. I mean, that's not bad, pretty versatile. Now at 600 millimeters, you're very far away from your subject. You don't get nearly as close to capability, but at 150 millimeters, I can certainly take this lens out on a day like today and be able to capture everything from detail up close to animals far away. All right, so a quick talk here on the breathing characteristics of the Sigma 150-600. We did see some breathing at both ends, 150 and 600 millimeters. You can see it here. It's not terrible, but it's absolutely present. And if you're shooting Sony E mount for video, I would absolutely go with the Tamron 150-500 if you want to eliminate as much breathing as possible. So as usual, we're gonna go shoot some more samples and look at them on the computer, and we'll evaluate the image quality of this lens when we see you again. Okay, and we're back. So let's talk about things like bokeh and sharpness on this lens. Now, long telephotos can have issues when it comes to flare. This lens is no exception. I mean, of course, you do have a large hood that will help, and you should always use it when possible. But you can see here, when you're shooting towards bright light sources like the sun, you might still typically get this loss of contrast and this washed out flare, as you can see here. Now, being a super telephoto zoom, the Sigma 150-600 is capable of getting nice soft backgrounds. So let's talk about bokeh next. Now, I'm going to start at 150 millimeters. You can see we've got a little bit of cat's eye in the corners, even when stopped down on this lens. But otherwise, it is a quite smooth looking bokeh. I was actually impressed with how round your autofocus highlights look, even when stopped down. Now, here you can see the same shot at 600 millimeters. Now, when we're zoomed in like this, you can see that that cat's eye is quite apparent, almost extending to the central part of the frame, and even when stopped down, it's still very apparent. Now, in some shots in real-world situations, the bokeh fall-off is quite nice and pleasing, but I did find that if you have a detail-rich, busy background, the bokeh itself can look a little bit busy and frenetic there, as you can see. But otherwise, overall, I was actually very pleased with how this lens renders out-of-focus areas. Now for our sharpness test, we put the Panasonic S5 away, and we actually torture tested the lens on a Sigma FPL body because it's got that 61 megapixel sensor. It could really show, issues with the lens. And I'm actually glad that we did do that because this lens proved to be a very sharp lens. Let's take a look at 150 millimeters first. You can see here in the center at F5, we're still getting really sharp results. Stopping down to F9, I really didn't notice that much improvement. The corners also hold up very well at 150 millimeters. Here again, you can see focused at F5 in the upper right corner, and then when we stop down to F9. Now, stopping down does improve those corners a little bit, but overall 150 millimeters was very sharp from center to edge. But of course, people are going to use these lenses primarily at the longest telephoto range. So at 600 millimeters, let's take a look at the center here at f6.3. I was actually still very impressed with the sharpness here. Now, when we stop down to F9 in the centers, you can see a slight improvement, but that's on a 61 megapixel sensor. Now, the corners at 600 millimeter aren't as strong as at 150. You can see here at f6.3, they do get a little soft in the extreme corners, even when focused there properly. And stopping down to F9, you can see here, it improves it a little bit, but not that much. But again, we are talking about extreme corners, and I don't think that's going to be an issue with most shots that you're going to take with this 600 millimeter lens. Overall, though, I was very pleased that focusing in the center to the corners basically didn't make much difference. The focusing plane is very flat on this lens. So overall, we have a very interesting lens here, but you're going to have different options based on what mount you go with. So let's talk about Sony E mount first. There you have the excellent Tamron 150-500, but I do feel that this lens is only marginally more expensive, only marginally heavier, and does give you another 100 millimeters in the focal length, plus a faster aperture. The Tamron has excellent sharpness, but I think the Sigma matches that very nicely. So the only worry I'd really have is that the Tamron is maybe going to focus just that little bit faster than the Sigma lens, and that might be a factor for you. You also, though, have the excellent Sony 200-600, and for a long time, this was basically your only long telephoto option. It's quite a bit more expensive. It's basically the same amount of light getting into the lens and the same kind of focal range, and both lenses prove to be very sharp. However, again, The Sony 200-600 is a very fast focusing lens, so if you're shooting sports or wildlife where you really needed absolutely fastest autofocus, that might still be the way to go. I think now the Sigma is actually going to draw some potential buyers away from the Sony 200-600. Now when it comes to L-mount, well, there's a lot less lenses to really have to compete against. You do have the Sigma 100-400, which is a great lens and definitely more affordable, but if you're looking for a long telephoto, this is going to be your only choice, although hopefully what you've got from this review is that it's a good choice to be forced into. I think the 150-600 is going to be very popular for L-mount users looking for that extra telephoto range. Thanks so much for joining us for this review on the Sigma 150-600. Please leave comments below, of course. Go to dpreview.com. You can also check out our sample galleries that we shot on this lens. That'll have links in the description below. Please subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell, and thanks so much for joining us. We shall see you soon.